World's Strongest Man is coming up and we have some amazing athletes in this year's lineup. However, we have two heavy favourites in the current World's Strongest Man, Mitchell Hooper, and the two-time winner of the World's Strongest Man, Tom Stoltman. Lots of people talking these two men up, ourselves included. Now, I don't want to dismiss everyone else that's competing at World's Strongest Man. Obviously, there are some fantastic athletes, new athletes, athletes with experience. But for me, it is a two-horse race for the title between these two. I do think there's athletes that could surprise. There's athletes I think are going to come third and fourth. But that first place, for me right now, and I know for a number of people, is a battle between a healthy Mitch Hooper and a healthy Tom Stoltman.
Yeah, there are some amazing athletes competing this year, and we will look more closely at those in the upcoming weeks. But right now, I wanted to look at Mitch and Tom. I've done a proper deep dive into Mitch and Tom. Do you remember a couple of years ago we did the head-to-head series?
I do indeed.
Yes, and this was before Mitch came on the scene even, so it's quite an old series now, actually.
It is, and I guess back then the real battle a lot of people saw in terms of the rivalry and strongman was going to be Martins and Kinishkovsky.
Well, that's something that actually never really materialised, and Tom and Mitch has become the unexpected big rivalry in the sport. So I thought it would be really fun to first off have a look at what they've done so far up against each other, on their own, their accolades, and then take a proper look at this year's final events. I don't think they're going to be in the group stages together. If they are, we'll riot. But we'll look at the final events and see how they compare to each other, but also what they've done on these events in their careers.
So first off, the physical. Very, very close in age. Mitch, 28 years old. Tom Stoltman is 29 years old. However, Tom has a huge height and weight advantage. Obviously, one of the tallest athletes we've seen, and I should imagine he's going to be one of the heaviest coming into this year's contest.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how accurate these weights are at this moment. We know strongmen fluctuate quite a bit, but this is a reasonable listing, I guess, for their weights.
So this is a really interesting one to look at, their first ever international competitions. Now, the fact that Tom Stoltman and Mitch Hooper are very close in age to each other, you can clearly see 2016 was Tom Stoltman's first international. Actually, I know the guy that won that competition.
Yeah,
but
right.
competing against the young Tom Stoltman, you could see the potential that this man had. And I believe he won the Atlas Stones in that competition as well, just showing how good he was even back then.
Well, he actually came fourth in the whole competition, which was a really great... So this was his first open weight international competition. He had done the junior version of this show before.
And obviously, Mitch Hooper has become known as a bit of an oddity when it comes to the strongman world. I mean, who the hell's first international is World's Strongest Man?
Yeah, that's really quite rare. Yeah.
And there was reasons for this. Obviously, COVID had a lot to do with that. I believe if there was no COVID, Mitch would have been competing on the international scene sooner. However, the fact that he couldn't meant he could just train in the kind of shallows, if you like, without people kind of recognising who he was. And he got very, very good in that time. And then somehow managed to get himself into World's Strongest Man 2022 and even making the final at his first attempt.
Okay, so on to their accolades so far then. Tom is a multiple-time Scotland Strongest Man. I didn't know how far down to go, to be honest, so I've stuck to the bigger ones, the more well-known competitions. So Tom has won World's Strongest Man 2 times, obviously, 2021 and 2022. He's a 3-time winner of Britain's Strongest Man. He won last year's Giants Live World Tour final. He has competed in 27 international competitions, and so far he has 14 international podiums. And he's competed at the World's Strongest Man 6 times, making the final 5 times. The only time he didn't make the final was his first year there when he had to pull out with an injury.
Yeah, and let's remember the last 4 years he has been first or second at the World's Strongest Man.
Yes, it's a competition he is very, very good at. And on to Mitch Hooper. He is the current World's Strongest Man. He's a 2-time back-to-back winner of the Arnold Strongman Classic, 2-time winner of the Arnold UK, different promoters, but same title, I guess. So he won that competition in 2022 and again this year, 2024. He won the most recent Rogue Invitational. He won last year's Australia's Strongest International. He won 2022's World Tour Final. And out of 16 international competitions that he's done, he has 15 international podiums. The only one he didn't podium in was his first World's Strongest Man. And he's a 2-time competitor at the World's Strongest Man and 2-time finalist thus far.
Yeah, clearly a hell of a resume in a very short career so far. I think any aspiring strongman would be happy to do that. But Mitch has put, he stated that he wants to go down as one of the greatest of all time. To do that, you need to be a multiple winner of all the big shows. Someone like Brian Shaw, someone like Zydrunas Savickas and Mariusz Pudzianowski, those guys won a lot of big contests.
They did.
And he's well on his way.
He is. It's so interesting. I mean, this is so rare. We should point out this, for those that don't know, I'm sure anyone watching this does know, this is very, very rare. Tom's is more typical of what you'd expect to see, that build up over a period of time, gaining confidence, etc. We've seen a more typical sort of journey for Tom Stoltman, haven't we?
And I think we're still seeing that with Tom,
100%.
because Tom, for me, is just a constant evolution. He's been good at World's Strongest Man for a number of years now, and I think that's why we have to talk about him as one of the favourites when it comes to Worlds. He likes the slower format, he's experienced there. The last 4 years in a row, as we said, he has been first or second. So you cannot deny when it comes to the World's Strongest Man, he is an absolute beast. However, in some of the other contests, he wasn't doing so well, although the last couple of years, you've seen that maturity, you've seen that development, and Tom now is very much like Mitch, consistently battling on podiums, consistently a threat for every major competition. And that makes it very, very exciting when you put these two head to head. They've beaten each other, they've consistently been on the podium now in the last few shows that they're doing, and both of them at their age are still improving, which is an exciting prospect of more big battles yet to come.
So I grabbed a few competition PBs, and I mean, these are the only ones where I could compare the two directly. So for a standard height deadlift, it's quite surprising to me that Tom Stoltman's is only 430 when he did 400 kilos for 5 reps at Britain's Strongest Man this year. But we don't see Tom often doing a max standard deadlift. This was back in 2019.
Yeah, Tom hasn't had the opportunity to go for a max deadlift in contests.
Well, he has. He just hasn't taken it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's not had he hasn't done the World Deadlift Championships. He's not had that opportunity come to him while he's prepping for competitions. Clearly, we can see he's a great deadlifter. Very impressive at Britain's Strongest Man on the 400 for reps. His Hummer tire deadlift is up at the 500 kilos mark, which is ahead of Mitch Hooper. Mitch Hooper's biggest deadlift you've put in there is from the Deadlift World Championships. However, he did do 475
he did.
in an individual lift in Australia, so we should probably point that out as well. Log lift, both very, very good, over 200 kilos. Tom's improvement on the log over the last few years has been superb. We don't have a log at World's Strongest Man, we have an axle, and they did go head-to-head recently on the axle at the Arnold Strongman Classic. Both of them are very good at the axle. Mitch Hooper obviously has kind of taken on some Olympic lifting, which is helping him overhead, but I think when it comes to a max, they will be close.
I think so too, and we are going to dive deep into the World's Strongest Man events in a minute, but we've got one more slide, Lottie, one more slide. Here we go. So here we can see their competition head-to-head history. So it was actually level pegging until very recently. So it started off 2022 World's Strongest Man final. Tom beat Mitch. Obviously, that was him taking his second title. Then they didn't compete against each other again until the 2023 Arnold Strongman Classic, which was won by Mitch. Mitch also won the 2023 World's Strongest Man. And then shortly after that, Tom beat him at the Giants Live Strongman Classic. Mitch then beat Tom at the Shaw Classic. That was Tom's first time competing there. And then Tom beat Mitch at the World Tour Final. So at this point, they were level pegging, 3-3. And then Mitch won the Rogue Invitational late last year. And obviously he won the Arnold Strongman Classic early this year. So it can change very quickly.
Yeah, these two clearly, capable of beating each other. Comes down to events, comes down to who's on form on the day. And it makes for an exciting build-up to this year's World's Strongest Man.
So on to the final events then for this year's World's Strongest Man, and I think this is what they're starting with. It's the Giants Medley, which is a frame carry into a yoke. Now, they did have this exact event a couple of years ago. I think it was 2021. Tom Stoltman won this event with 18.36 seconds, I believe it was. He was the only man to come under 20 seconds, with Konstantin Janasha being in second place with 20.31 seconds. So for Mitch, I've looked at his timber carry results from the Arnolds. Last year he was third on it behind Maxime and Mateusz, and then this year he won the events. For the yoke section, I mean, Mitch is well known for yoke being his very best event. He's never actually lost a yoke race in competition. He's done some yoke type medleys as well, where yoke was one element of the event. And the only time he's lost that was this year, actually, at the UK Arnold's, when it was the yoke into dumbbell press, and he came second to Lucas Hatton.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the speed type events, Mitch is extremely hard to beat.
Yes.
However, Tom has shown tremendous improvement. And obviously, he said he won this event a couple of years ago at Worlds. Even if Mitch wins this one, with the athletes that are competing, I don't see many athletes that might get between them. The one athlete that maybe could is someone like an Evan Singleton.
Evan, definitely, yeah.
So the Max Axel is a big event that's happening at World's Strongest Man this year, and we haven't actually seen these two go head-to-head on a Max Axel. Tom did do a Max Axel a few years back where he hit 190 kilos. However, he's continued to improve from then, winning the Axel at Britain's Strongest Man, which was 160 kilos for reps, and he got 4 reps with the Axel at the Arnold Strongman Classic. Mitch Hooper, if you follow Mitch in terms of his training, has really worked hard when it comes to the Axel. He ended up winning the Axel at the Arnold Strongman Classic. He's put some big numbers up in training. Both of these athletes, I believe, are capable of going well over 200 kilos. Now, the big factor comes, will they have the energy to push that high? As you get to the final of World's Strongest Man, they've already gone through the heats, the body will be feeling it. I think they're both capable of doing big numbers. By that point, I'd be surprised to see world records go, but you never know. We've seen it happen before in terms of overhead events at World's Strongest Man, and I really don't see many athletes getting between them on this one. For me, they would be big favourites to come first and second.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to predict as well, because most of the guys that are likely to make the final, we have not seen them do a Max Axel, and you can't even really go off their log lift results, can you? Because it's such a different
log is
event.
completely different to an Axel, but Mitch and Tom both have great results on the Axel, both technically good at it, and I think they'd be very hard to beat for anyone else.
Yeah. So they're also going to be doing a keg toss for max height. Now, the keg in question is 15 kilos. They did this event in the 2021 final. So again, we have some data for Tom Stoltman there. He came second to Brian Shaw. He was tied second with Maxime Boudreau. We haven't seen Mitch on this same setup, but we did at the Arnold UK see him do it was like a really compact mini sandbag toss for max height. That was much heavier though, so it is hard to compare the heights. That weighed 25 kilos, the sandbag that they were throwing. Interestingly, Mitch also came second, tied with Max Boudreau. He was second to Thor, but should point out, Max was injured, to be fair to him.
Yeah, I mean, Tom has proven he's a great thrower multiple times. Mitch's throwing has improved drastically. He looks very, very good in terms of training. I would probably give someone like Tom the nod on this one.
Yeah,
I think he has the advantage. He's got the experience. He's got the height, which is huge. Also, this weight being 15 kilos, we're going to see these weights launched into the stratosphere.
Yeah,
it's going to be quite visually cool to watch, I think.
It will, because it's not that heavy, but it's massive. Like, the kegs are really big as well, and Tom just has more consistent results than Mitch when it comes to throwing, and that's for a run, for a max height, or for a max weight.
I'd agree, but I still think they'll be close. You know, Mitch has kind of proven when it comes to events he's good at staying close to people.
Yeah.
But I would give Tom the nod on this one.
What's going to be really interesting, and not just for this event, but every event, is how many people. So say Tom wins this one, Mitch won the last one. How many people are getting in between them?
That is the big question, and both have proven, you know, that they're hard to beat.
Yeah.
You know, we'll give Mitch the nod on the Giants medley, but Tom is not going to be far behind.
No.
The Axel, they're going to be close to each other.
Yeah.
You might give Tom the nod on this one, but Mitch is not going to be far behind, and that's what makes this competition exciting. It's a shame that some other athletes are missing from World's Strongest Man this year, because they could have potentially had athletes get between them. And I think the fact that maybe a Kiriashkovsky isn't there, a Novikov is injured now, Martins is not in shape right now, it makes it even more of a battle between these two. There are a couple of athletes that I think could cause them problems, but they don't do it consistently. Whereas now Mitch and Tom are consistently doing these things. It's going to be very hard to get between them.
Now, this next event is the one that I feel could be the decider for the whole competition.
This is you kind of saying, shut up, Loz, we've still got the Conans to
Wow, this is the biggest unknown, because so much of it is going to rely on who actually makes the final. Obviously, that's the same for every event, but more so here, I feel, because we've got inconsistent results here on the Conan. So Tom has done this 3 times in competition before. The first time was at Britain's Strongest Man 2020, where he placed 4th. That's quite a long time ago now, so we try and forget that. He did it last year in the heats, and he placed last in his group. However, he did have a freakishly good group when it came to Conan Circle, because he had Pavlo Cordiaca. Para Dwyer is very good at this type of event as well. So a last place in that group wouldn't have been a last place in other groups. Then he did it at the World Tour Finals late last year, where he placed 5th. So he was behind the likes of Mitch Hooper, Matt Ragg, Pavlo Cordiaca, who could potentially be in the final too. Looking at Mitch Hooper, he's only done it twice in competition. He had it in his group stages as well, obviously, and he won his group. And then he came 2nd on it at the World Tour Final behind Matt Ragg.
Did he beat Pavlo?
He did. So he had the advantage of going after Pavlo on this event, and Matt Ragg had the advantage of going after him. So
I think right now, based on what's happened in the past, this is probably the biggest weakness for Tom in the competition in terms of what events we have in the final. I know Mitch's training is going very well on this. That doesn't mean that Tom's isn't going well as well. And, you know, Tom is one of those athletes that could come back and be amazing at it.
Yeah.
But based on the evidence that we have, this is probably the one slight weakness, that the fact that, you know, if Matt Ragg gets in that final, if a Pavlo gets in that final, could cause him problems.
So I read online, I haven't actually seen any footage, but I read that he's training with a proper Conan setup now rather than the Zerch carries he was doing before, so that could make a big difference. But yeah, depending on who makes the final, you could see someone like Matt Ragg win it with Mitch in 2nd and Tom in 3rd, in which case, do you know what I mean? They're still not getting away from each other. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Absolutely.
But it could be where we see the biggest points difference between the two, but it also might not.
So the deadlift this year is a tire deadlift for reps. I'm not going to come up with the full name of the deadlift because I can't even remember it. However, it is a deadlift for reps, and they've gone head to head on a deadlift a number of times. Tom only has 1 win against Mitch. They have tied once, and Mitch has 3 wins against Tom. Both are great deadlifters. I would say when it comes to reps, Mitch has proven he's probably got a little bit better endurance. However, we get to this point of the competition where people are fatigued. And again, I think they will be very close to each other on the deadlift. I certainly don't see one placing 1st and the next guy placing 5th. I think they're going to be very close to each other. Probably a good chance of going head to head at this point as well. So again, I'd give Mitch the nod on a deadlift for reps, but not by a huge amount.
So I think it's going to be really interesting. What event is going to be before the deadlift for reps to place the order? Because if it is Conan's, then they might not be in the same group, and it's going to be a massive advantage going after the other guy, isn't
Absolutely. It? And the final event you have to give to Tom Stoltman. The Atlas Stones, the man has just proven that he is the best in the world when it comes to stones. He is winning Atlas Stones at almost every... I mean, you've got to go back to a freak incident
yeah,
at the World Tour Finals 2021 where he didn't win stones, and I think before that you're going back years.
So to 2019 was the time before that when he didn't win an Atlas Stone run. So now what's so important about this is that not only is Atlas Stones a banker event for Tom, it's the deciding event if they are tied on points by the end of it. Like, I don't think any of us want to see that. So I feel, no one's unbeatable on anything. We saw that happen in 2021 with the incident. And, you know, under these types of circumstances where they're under a lot of pressure...
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. But how many points they've got going into this is going to be so important, obviously.
It's a lot of pressure on the likes of Mitch. You've almost got to be 2 points ahead of Tom going into the stones. That's how you have to see it as the athlete. Because if you do rely on Tom winning and you come 2nd and you end up tied on points... You do lose out on countback, which
with
the last event rule, which could happen at World Strongest Man with these two being so close, I feel.
Yeah.
However, you know, the rules are the rules, and once you know the rules as an athlete, you just have to get on with it. We deal with these things as and when they come. I am excited. As a fan, I'm very excited. I really love Tom. I love Mitch. They're both amazing athletes. Obviously, as a coach, you don't like those kind of rules. It would be like putting the yoke as the last event, and then Tom thinking I need to be 2 points ahead of Mitch going into this. So I don't like that kind of heavy favour on one event. However, When it comes to the rules are the rules, they are what they are. The athletes know what the rules are, and that's important. Every competition does have different rules, so if you are an athlete, make sure you listen in the rules meeting, because things do change. But yeah, I think it's clear that these two are the heavy favourites. It's going to be an exciting battle. We've seen them battle before many times now. Not long to wait, and we find out who will be the world's strongest man 2024.